Welcome, Optimancers. This is Chris, Treant Monk, and on Friday I talked about Unearthed Arcana class feature variants and put out a video, and I had some people agree with what I said, some people disagreed with what I said, but one person who I have interacted with in the past mentioned that you really disagreed with it, so I want to introduce Stefan, who is also known as Moonsilver. Welcome to Treant Monk's Temple.
Hi, it's nice to be here. I didn't expect to get this far. I think I'm famous now. Yeah, so for me it was really interesting because I looked at this Unearthed Arcana and looked through it. I was like, there's two or three things that I think are a no-go, then there's two or three things that I think might be problematic, and the rest is great and I'll keep it. And then you came out with your video, and you said, I usually don't review Unearthed Arcana, and it's because it really bothers me. And this one is no different. In fact, I would hardly allow anything of this. And, that was your sentiment, right?
Now, when it comes to, so I should just put that in context, when I look at these ability by ability, and we've gone over this a little bit since, and I actually showed you how I would change these things if I was to do it, and I would keep a lot of it. But my main issues are that there's some of these abilities I think are problematic, and I also think that they've screwed some classes here. I think a lot of classes got a lot of goodies, and I think a lot of classes that could have used a lot of goodies got very little, or they got screwed altogether. And I found that these things all seem to hit at low levels, and I don't think that's what we would want to do. Some of these classes I thought needed things at higher levels, and they were fine at low levels, but they gave them a bunch of stuff at low levels, nothing at high levels. I had a number of problems with this thing.
So, what I think is that maybe you're looking at it from a wrong perspective at some points. I don't think the intent of the Unearthed Arcana is necessarily to create parity between the classes, to rebalance the game. It's more like these are things we came up with that really change the classes for the better, make them more fun. And yeah, we do see that, especially the monk doesn't get anything noteworthy. Like the monk gets feel-good features, but nothing amazing. But when talking about allowing Unearthed Arcana in my game, I don't tend to look at, could this be done better? I tend to look at, is this fun?
Okay, I think we have a little difference there, because naturally, the first thing I look at is, could it be done better? That's my first instinct always. And then I think afterwards, would I keep it as is if it was the only option? And sometimes then that my opinion will change on it. But my very first instinct is, do I think this was a good choice, and do I think this could have been done better? I mean, it's the very first thing that just instinctually hits me. Maybe because I have a YouTube channel where I talk about optimization. That probably skews my views on it. What I was thinking is maybe we could just go through the whole document, because the reason we're doing this is because you had left a comment actually on my Discord, and you and I have interacted mostly on Twitter. We've interacted, but
Yes.
we've interacted before, and we don't always agree on things, but we're usually reasonably close together, right? So when we have differences of opinion, it's usually pretty minor stuff. And you had mentioned that with this video, that you disagreed with me on so much, and that you were actually bothered by it, that you disagreed so much. So I was really actually interested to pick your brain and find out where we disagreed, and find out if it's something that I missed, something that maybe we're just looking at it in a different way, or if it's something that maybe if we talk about, I might come to see in a different way. So I was hoping we could just go through the document together and go ability by ability. I'll kind of recap what my opinion was and give you a chance to comment, and then if need be, we'll discuss it further. Sound good?
Yes.
All right, great. So if we go into our Unearthed Arcana here, the very first one that we had was Proficiency Versatility, which was just the ability to switch out your skills and as you level up. And I had mentioned in the video I thought was fine, and my understanding is you thought this one was fine as well.
Yes, this is neat. It's really good that in this Unearthed Arcana, they seem to introduce multiple features that allow you, when you have made a mistake at character creation, to rectify that mistake later on. And that is really a good idea, so you're not at the mercy of the DM to allow you to rebuild your character.
And as an optimizer, I also think if I'm multi-classing, and let's say I start out with a class that didn't have the skill proficiencies I want, and I multi-class into a class that has skill proficiencies that I want, I could also make those changes, and I like that from an optimization point of view as well.
Yeah, that's neat. I'd say it's usually very minor between the customization options you have with the background, where rules is written, like no variance at all. You get to pick 2 proficiencies of your choice.
Yeah, with background, of course you can, yes.
Yeah.
But, often, I guess, sometimes I'll do Cleric and I'll go into something else, and maybe if I go into, I don't know, Rogue, there might be more than a couple proficiencies. I might not want the initial proficiencies I took with Cleric at all. I like the ability to switch them out.
Yeah.
So anyway, we would both definitely allow this one.
Yes.
All right, and we agree on that one. So let's get into the Barbarian. The Barbarian was one that I had said, let's start with survival instincts. So I had said survival instincts I didn't think was unbalanced. I just thought it was kind of silly. Because I thought, if I'm practicing my medicine and my nature, and then all of a sudden I'm an expert in survival and animal handling, and not improving my medicine and nature, that didn't make sense to me. So what was your opinion on survival instincts?
So my opinion is that this is an amazing feature, and I'm really happy to see it in the game. My question to you would be, would you allow this in your game? When a player comes to you and says, hey, I want to use the survival instincts from the Unearthed Arcana, can I use it as it is in the document?
I would say, can you explain to me in character or in the narrative of the game how you became an expert on those skills? And if they could give me a good story, yeah, because balance-wise, I don't have a problem with it. It just seems silly to me. So if you come to me with a story and go, this is what happened to my character between sessions and why I became an expert on things I didn't do at all before, or maybe it was things you were doing and you were doing without proficiency, then I would be far more open to it. It just, as it's written, it seems kind of silly to me because it just seems, if you just allow it without any narrative explanation, it doesn't seem to make sense to me why you would vault ahead on skills you don't use against the ones you do.
Okay, I feel like this argument doesn't hold up in practice to other parts of the game, and that is why I think it's a bad argument.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Yes, we can see this happening in the game already in many, many occasions, especially at levels 1, 2, and 3. We see this with the Scout Rogue. They gain proficiency in nature and survival and expertise at level 3.
Yeah, I'll say I think this Scout Rogue is dumb for the same reason.
Okay. We see this with the Law Bard. They get the 3 proficiencies, and they get expertise at the same level, so they can also do this.
Well, yes. Now that although they can do it, they're not pushed into it. The Scout is different. This one does remind me of the Scout. And I've talked to people before who are really frustrated that they want to play a Scout character, but they can't take the skills they need until they become a Scout. Otherwise, they lose out on those skill proficiencies,
yes.
Which is dumb. And to me, it's dumb. And
I agree.
And this one, I have the same issue with.
We also see this with Eldritch Knight and Arcane Trickster. And to a certain extent, we see this with spellcasters unlocking spells of a next tier. Especially if you think of a Cleric going from level 4 to 5. narratively, that transformation is dramatic. You go from like increasing your chances to hit a bit and healing a little, and maybe curing a disease and summoning a floating sword, to resurrecting the dead and calling upon spirit guardians. So I don't think that not allowing this feature requiring a justification narratively uh, is a very fair thing to do, because it's in the nature of the game that this happens, and it's somewhat of a gameplay necessity that we need to split up gaining features at the early levels so that especially new players can ease into their characters step by step. And this sometimes adds very extreme changes to the character. But I think it's kind of a fact of the game that this happens, and it's a necessity for it to be fun, because you don't want to just dump everything on someone at level 1.
I'm not sure it's a necessity to be fun, or at least I would disagree with that. As I mentioned in the video, what I would say would make more sense is if you were to get 2 new proficiencies, and 2 of your old proficiencies were to become, you were to gain expertise in those, you would get the same benefit. It would make more sense to me narratively, and I don't see how that's less fun.
I think it's stronger. Like, your change would make the features stronger for one very important instant, and that is the athletics skill. Most of the skills on this list, with the exception of perception, have no bearing on combat. And perception's bearing on combat isn't that huge either. But athletics is very relevant, especially for a barbarian, because you can virtually guarantee that you succeed on grapples and shoves at that point, because you rage, you have advantage, you have expertise. It's really strong. I've seen barbarians multi-class into rogue.
I'm not all that concerned about that, because I've generally found that when a barbarian makes an athletics check, they make the check. Or at least that's my experience, especially if they're raging. You got advantage, you're working on a high strength, you have proficiency, you're probably all right anyway. I mean, you can throw another, +2, +3, +4 on that. I don't see... I mean, most of the time you're either going to succeed or fail. And most of the time you're going to succeed. I don't see it being a huge issue with balance to allow a barbarian expertise in athletics. Personally, that's my opinion. We're almost arguing on the other side now. Now I'm defending things, but anyway.
So my verdict for this thing is basically, I don't think it's bad because it's not unprecedented, and it's kind of a, in my mind, necessary evil that we have accepted already when we're playing this game.
Okay. I think we both put our points in there. Let's move on to Instinctive Pounce. Now, I like the Instinctive Pounce. I'm fast movement I like too, so it would be a hard trade for me, but I definitely would allow it, and I think it's neat. What's your view on Instinctive Pounce?
I also think it's a nice feature. It's very interactive. I would say, as a DM considering allowing this, mind your game. Because if you have players that take a long time to decide on their reactions, or if you're not playing on a grid, then this thing might just be very complicated and slow down play.
I like your comment about the grid, because I always think of things in a grid, and then I always need somebody to tell me, but what if you're not playing on a grid? And that's true. How do you know that the enemy's within 15 feet of you unless you're playing on a grid? So that is a good point.
Yeah. So, but I think the feature is great. It's just know your table.
Right. Okay, so that's all the Barbarian gets. And then my overall opinion was, why did the Barbarian get screwed here? Because we're giving up... we're trading out abilities that are already pretty good for other abilities that are pretty good, and I didn't think they were unbalanced. But of the classes here, it seemed that a lot of classes were trading stuff that wasn't very good for stuff that's good, or they're just enhancing their current abilities. And I thought, do the designers think that Barbarians are already too good or something. I don't know why the Barbarian didn't get more. What was your opinion overall on the Barbarian?
I think there's a couple of issues here. One is that basically two different games of 5th edition exist, with feats and without, which is absolutely massive for barbarians.
Oh yeah,
Because the value of reckless attack changes so much depending whether or not you have Great Weapon Master.
and Barbarians
It's
that I see
ludicrous.
all take it.
Um, yeah, it's actually a funny maths problem because I actually think many barbarians are wrong in the order that they take their stuff.
Oh well,
Especially looking at Polar Master.
yeah.
But in general, it's a good feat to take, and you're like within zero point 0.5 DPR per attack from an optimization standpoint.
So
Uh,
is your view that if feats are allowed, then the Barbarians don't need anything, or they don't need
um,
anything beyond what's given here?
no, what I think is that the designers have to be mindful of games with feats and without, and so classes being weak or strong at different points changes between those two game modes in a way. And another very important thing is that while the balance between characters is kind of relevant, it is not crucial to the enjoyment of the game.
I would agree with that. I mean, you can have a Barbarian and a fighter in the same group, and as long as they each feel relevant, then they're both probably having fun. My main issue is when I find classes that were already maybe overshadowing one other class to some degree get more tools to overshadow them, and then the ones that were getting overshadowed don't get any tools to even that out. I'm
Mhm.
not sure that increases fun. I think that has the opposite effect.
I feel like that's not what's happening, though. I feel like a lot of it is about when you're playing a barbarian, are you happy with being a barbarian? Or do you look at the wizard and say, well, he can make enemies not move, so I feel really not epic swinging my axe here.
Let me
And I
give you
don't think that's what's happening.
let me give you an example. So if I'm
Hmm.
playing a barbarian, I want to smash stuff. So I take a huge strength, big weapon, and I'm hitting things, and I'm hopefully doing a reasonable amount of damage. Paladin comes along, and they're smashing things for more damage than me. That's okay. I can live with that. Now they have a shield, and they have a better armor class than me as well. Whatever, I have more hit points. But then when they start getting things like Spirit Guardians, and now they're doing massively more damage than me, and my damage starts to feel irrelevant, my fun is reduced.
So the problem here is Spirit Guardians,
Well, my problem is
and
that
we agree on that one.
I think that some classes got lots of treats, and some classes did not get a lot of treats, and
Hmm.
I'm not sure those treats ended up where they needed to be.
I feel like it's mostly about making sure that the class itself feels fulfilling to play,
Yeah, I would agree.
and and some of the classes did end up getting something absolutely insane, which if we're discussing if Barbarian got shafted without looking at the context of the other features, I feel like we might be talking past each other. Because like a blind fighting Great Weapon Master Paladin or something will probably do really well, but I don't think it should exist.
Right.
So
Right. Okay. So
it's
you're
less
you're
shafted.
so yeah. Okay. I guess I should clarify too that so if we're reducing or admitting that there's some competing abilities for other martial characters that would overshadow a barbarian, and we got rid of those, then this isn't so bad. That's
Yeah,
I like your point. Okay.
basically you need a niche to feel awesome.
Okay. All right. So we're going to have to agree to disagree on that one to some degree. I think that the barbarian got shafted. But anyway, uh,
Okay.
let's move on to the bard. So the first thing that happened with the bard is the bard got more spells known than any other class in the game, and a lot of those spells, what I had pointed out in the video, were not typical for bard spell list. The bard spell list has a certain theme to it. That there's certain things they can do and certain things they can't do. And now this bard spells adds some of those things that they can't do Now they can do those too. And I wasn't sure that enhances the flavor of the bard in a positive way. That was my view on it. What is your view here?
I think if we look at these spells, we can see a couple of trends here. One thing we can see is that the bard gets some spells that really allow them to focus on themselves, especially something. And I know you're going to flinch at that, but like something like the Tensor's Transformation.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Tensor's Transformation being on there that much.
Yes.
I'm not sure I would cast it with my bard, but it being on that list doesn't cause a huge problem for me. Yes.
Then we have like Prismatic Spray. We kind of have Prismatic Wall too. We have a couple of these spells that really stand out as making the bard themselves stronger. And this kind of fits with the release of the Swords and the Whispers bard in Senator's Guide to Everything, who are more these self-sufficient, self-centered bard subclasses. But at the same time, we also see the bard getting spells to lean more into the support role. In fact, I recall when I went through this list, I read Hero's Feast, and I was confused. I was like, why is Hero's Feast? Hero's Feast is a bard spell, and then I went to check, and it's not.
I had the same reaction when I read Color Spray. I'm like, bards don't get Color Spray already? Oh, they don't. Why not? Yeah. And there's some. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of spells here. I think are perfectly appropriate for bards. There's I'd say, and I went through them on that video I sent you, but I'd say at least half of them I have no issue with at all. And there's other ones that I don't have a balance issue with, though I'm not sure why they're there. I'm not sure why the bard is getting enlarge reduce. But I don't have a problem with it being on the list. There's just a few, like Mirror Image, I find an odd addition to a bard spell list. It doesn't seem to fit with the theme that I would expect for bards, and it certainly changes how a bard is going to look at their spells and build, and not just swords bard. I mean, I get how a swords bard, of course, is going to love that, but isn't every bard going to love that? Like, what about if we're looking at bards that aren't swords bards? Doesn't that change? I know, like, when I'm looking at playing a lore bard, for example, there's certain strategies I'm thinking to mind my defenses, especially when I get into magical secrets. How do I want to balance off what I, want to cover for defense versus, other kinds of spells. And then, Mirror Image I don't know why it was there in the first place, but in addition, it almost becomes a must pick.
I think 3 spells here really stand out. Those are Aid, Mirror Image, and Slow.
Yeah, I would agree with those ones. Yeah, those stand out to me too.
Okay, and you say in your video that Bard is one of the stronger classes in the game.
Yeah, that got some pushback too that I didn't expect, but
yeah, some people might not agree. I agree that Bard is strong. Bard is like, I feel it's like it's one of the arcane casters, so it gets hypnotic pattern, so it's good.
That's
and
the polymorph and polymorph and animate objects and lots of good stuff on the bard spell list. Yeah.
So what I challenge you to do is play bard, which you claim to be one of the best classes, in a campaign, and then you level up your character and you come to 2nd level and you probably pick Suggestion and Heat Metal. Shatter, something of those sort, right? Those are the best 2nd level spells.
Sure, yeah.
Right? And then you come to 3rd level and you kind of pick if you want Hypnotic Pattern or Fear. And then your DM decides it's time for the Undead and Constructs arc. So now you're fighting undead and some machines who are largely immune to charms, immune to fears. Some of them are too dumb to understand suggestion, and many of them don't wear metal. And suddenly you don't have a 2nd or 3rd level spell to cast. Well, and the best thing you can do is upcast blindness.
Shatter should still work. You mentioned Shatter, didn't you?
Yeah, but shatter is kind of a sad thing past level 4.
Well, okay. Once we get to higher levels, then yeah,
Right?
I would agree that at third level, the spells they have aren't going to work well against undead. But at fourth
Yeah.
level, polymorph will work just fine. At fifth level, animate objects will work just fine. There's still lots of
Yes.
stuff. I mean, we can pick. Right here at this level, the bard is not as good against this kind of enemy. Well, yeah,
Yes,
but we
and I
can do
think
we can do
that's a
that
problem.
with any class.
Um,
Can't we improve the bard against those enemies in a way that doesn't affect the rest of the game and doesn't affect the way that bards feel? Isn't there a way to do that? Maybe that's me again
um,
thinking, how could we make this better? Then is it fine as it is?
maybe.
But yeah, I mean, I look at these and I'm not just thinking about undead because most of the time I'm not fighting undead. Right?
I think.
I'm thinking of a bard and how it feels to play, and then I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, that spell on that list has just changed that experience significantly.
Mhm.
And how has it changed the experience? Oh well, my bard is going to be tougher. Does my bard need to be tougher? Not really. I don't see it. But again, I accept that there's lots of people obviously who think and I googled this because I had multiple people ask me why I said the bard was the second most powerful class in the game, and I'm like, well, that's common knowledge. So I googled it, and then I looked at all these tier lists where the bard was near the bottom, and I'm like, oh. So I accept the fact that I might be in the minority, thinking that the bard is good, but my opinion is the bard is already good and didn't need that boost.
Mhm.
But I
So.
accept that might be not the common perception.
Mhm. So think the most spells on this list don't matter. When I went
Yeah,
through the Unearthed Arcana, I like rated every single one thing, and 70% of my justifications for spells were why not.
yeah,
Like,
well, yeah, okay,
and that works. I think slow is absolutely important to be on this spell list, just for the sake that your bard cannot hit an enemy pool that absolutely invalidates their character in a campaign arc.
Now, I should mention
Because
slow, although I consider it a significant boost here, theme wise, I don't have as big a problem with it.
yeah,
Yeah. Because,
I
I mean, debuffing enemies at level 3 spells is already what
mhm.
a bard can do. So, in terms of theme of what kind of thing slow does, it does a similar thing. So, I don't have a
Yeah,
big problem with slow being there.
yeah.
But mirror
I
image changes things for me for a bard
yes,
for sure.
yes. Mirror image is probably like the most contentious one, and also the one
Yeah.
that I had like as a question mark on my document.
Okay.
Um, I think slow is important because it doesn't make bard like it doesn't make the best bard better.
You know what?
Should have access
If you
to
were in my
slow.
campaign and you said, "Can I have slow on my bard spell list?" I probably would say yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's most of the time it's a worse hypnotic pattern, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's right. There's certain
Yeah,
situations where slow is better,
yeah,
and it does a similar kind of thing. You're taking a group of
yes,
enemies and you're
yes,
you're making them less effective. That's what bards do. So
yes,
you want to be able to do that with your bard. I don't have a problem with that.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Then we have aid. I think adding aid to spell list mostly doesn't bother people because you buff allies, which other people are never gonna perceive your character to be broken if you have a feature that lifts everyone up.
Fair
You know
enough.
how paladins are kind of strong, right?
Yeah.
Paladins are pretty strong, right? So let's take a notch out of the paladins. Let's make them weaker. The aura of protection only affects the paladin. I bet you people are going to complain more about the paladin after that change,
Oh yeah.
despite the class being nerfed, right?
Yeah.
So, and aid is one of these spells you're never sad about casting it, and you're never sad about getting it from an ally. And it's a spell that works in any campaign, unlike most second level bard spells.
So just I might be able to we might be able to come to agreement quickly
Mhm.
here. So if I understand correctly, your defensive aid is the main thing here is we're not unbalancing characters against each other, and it's fun.
Yes, and it allows bard to be certain that they will have a second level spell that will work in any campaign.
All right, I'll give you aid. How about that?
A mirror image.
Mirror image.
Now, mirror image.
This one we might
is
not
again,
have to agree to disagree on.
yeah, it's again a spell that works in any campaign. I think flavor-wise it does fit, because the bard does get the other illusion spells.
Yes, flavor isn't the issue here as much as theme.
So let's look at balance. Well, theme.
Yeah, theme in that there's certain things that a bard does. Illusion is a school of magic, but one illusion and another illusion can be vastly different in how they make a character feel to play. But when we talk about a spell that improves that, like slow versus hypnotic pattern, vastly different if we look at the schools of magic, blah, 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 blah. But I agree that thematically, we're doing the same thing. We're debuffing a bunch of enemies. Mirror image adds something that bards normally can't do. And it is, when they have a spell list, when I look at sorcerer, bard, cleric, wizard, there's certain things that they're good at, certain things they're not good at. And I don't see why a bard that I already thought had a really good spell list needed to be taking the one thing they're not good at and say, well, you can do that too.
Okay. I think that's somewhat fair. I think mirror image might not make it to print.
I would agree.
I also think that if you look at the defensive capabilities of characters, Glamour and Whisper's Bard are the weakest characters in the game, tied with the player's handbook Warlocks. They get leather armor, like studded leather armor, nothing else, and they don't get an opportunity to raise their dexterity at any point in their career. Or at least not at the levels that C play.
Yeah.
So basically, if you're a bard, your AC is 15 tops.
Oh yeah, at first level? Yeah, well, that's not true. You can do better than that.
How?
Variant human, moderately armored.
That's fair, but that again brings us to the problem that two different games exist.
Okay. So even now, let's say we're not playing with feats.
Yeah.
So first level, yeah, bard's got to play like a wizard, right? They got to hang back. Well, maybe or maybe not. I mean, their armor class probably is pretty in line with the rogue, who might be going to melee.
Yes.
But as we move up in levels, the rogue is getting additional defenses. I would argue the bard is also getting additional defenses. Those defenses don't boost their armor class or turn attacks against them into misses, but they do gain defenses in terms of mobility or ability to distract enemies, ability to reduce enemies' attacks. I mean, if we look at the big picture, there's a lot of things that a bard can do to improve their defenses that don't boost hit points and armor class.
I think that's fair, but you also have to look at the other arcane casters who are sitting at a comfortable 21 AC when they're needed, and also have those teleporting defenses.
Yeah, it depends on the arcane class, but some of those arcane classes, I'd say the bard has a better spell list than. In general, and although they're weaker in defense, they're stronger in other ways. And the other class is the wizard, and I don't think bards need to be wizards. I think it's okay if the bard is a little less powerful than the wizard, spell-wise.
I also think that mirror image is weaker than shield.
Yes, I agree. Shield is shield. The elephant in the room is shield is a first level spell. Right, so that means you can get it right away. And the second thing is that it a +5 boost to AC for an entire round is a lot better than most of those defenses that give you defense against a single attack. So yeah, shield's a really good spell. It's not on the bard spell list, but again, thematically, that's what bards aren't good at. That's the one thing they're not good at, spell wise. And I thought that was okay. I thought that was a way that playing a bard felt different than playing a sorcerer.
Yeah, from playing a lot of warlocks in light armor and seeing warlocks in light armor who also have the same amount of defense in a way.
Yeah, unless they're hexblade.
Unless they're hexblade. I do agree that it feels different, but it feels different. I don't think it's necessarily
You got to
a
elaborate.
positive connotation. Um, I think there might be playtest feedback from a lot of, or like just play experience feedback from a lot of people that report that their bard felt really sad because someone got into melee with them and they just like got wrecked.
Yeah, that's true.
Uh,
But they probably, yeah, that bard probably isn't the only. They probably get that feedback with rogues.
to an extent, but Uncanny Dodge is one hell of an ability.
It comes at level 5, and it also works only against one attack.
Yeah, but there's a big change,
Yeah,
and you make stacks. But if you say, hey, we play with this Unearthed Arcana, but bards don't get mirror image, I would agree with that. Like that is
yeah.
like that's reasonable.
All right. I think we can move on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We're not in total agreement, but we're
Yes.
not that far apart. Let's move on to magical inspiration. Now, I had the issue that my main issue with magical inspiration is that it can apply to multiple targets, which doesn't match anything to do with what other inspiration uses can do. Now, my understanding is you are in a similar viewpoint on this.
No, I think every fireball should add 5 more damage. um, I find this feature weird because the interaction is very obvious, and there's a statement
Well,
by Jeremy Crawford
and they caught it
stating,
with Blessed Warrior, right? Like they or is it Blessed Weapon?
Blessed Strikes
Blessed
from
Strikes.
the Cleric level 8.
They caught
Yeah.
the language there, and then they didn't catch it here.
I think so. The weird thing is, Jeremy Crawford said about this feature that it is intended to help spellcasters because inspiration doesn't interact with spellcasters a lot. It doesn't help them out a lot, and I found that statement very weird because
Well, yeah, I
I
mean,
cannot imagine anything better than having a D6 or a D8 that I can add onto my failed concentration save.
I can. If I can, this.
Okay. I have been bested. You're right. Yeah, I don't
Okay,
see where this exists.
so I think the solution to this, I'm just going to kind of bring out what I figure should change, would be to limit it to one target, right? Just include the similar kind of language where, okay, you want to add it to your spell healing, that's fine, but it works against one target.
I think add it to spell healing, but not to spell damage, because
I agree. Actually, that's a
what
good
the
point.
Valabard
That's a
does.
good point because now we're taking away from the Valabard. Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Yeah, but
Well,
add
that's
it to healing. That's like you have 2 supporters.
yeah. I like that. Okay. I think we can agree on that. So we recommend if you want to use this, limit it to healing, and I assume we agree to one target.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to spell versatility. I have no issue with spell versatility for bards or sorcerers. I have an issue with it how they implemented it for warlocks, but we'll get to that.
Yes.
And you think spell versatility is fine as well?
I think it's fine. There's a slight caveat of know your campaign, because if you're thinking about we're playing this in Dungeon of the Mad Mage,
Yeah. Okay.
right? You get one spell a day. That's actually after every proper adventuring day. Whereas if you use this, for example, in Storm King's Thunder, where you travel across
You can
the entire
change. You
Storm
can
Coast.
change your entire.
Yes.
Now, do you think that's a problem?
Um,
I'm
so,
not sure. I agree that's a problem.
So Jeremy Crawford pointed out about this feature that
Yes.
people are scared about encroaching upon other classes' territory, but this isn't encroaching upon another class's territory because prepared spellcasters get to swap all of their spells, whereas this is just one.
Right. And so you're saying in certain situations that doesn't apply.
Yes.
Okay.
So in my own game, I have changed this to every day of adventure, which means anything that basically is anything resembling an encounter, whether casting a spell is reasonable, just like the slightest hint of adventure counts, or after 5 days of downtime, or after 5 days of travel, just to slow it down a little bit.
I think that sounds good. I don't think there's any chance they'll use that kind of language
Yes.
when they do. But in terms of if you want to use it in your game, yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yes.
Okay.
I could imagine when you finish a long rest, if you have rolled initiative on that day. That might be a language that works.
maybe something like that. We'll see what
But
happens.
then people might start attacking allies to swap their spells during travel. So maybe not.
Well, I've had that before, where if you roll initiative is one of those things that you might be able to game. But then again, if you're a DM, don't let your people game you, right? I hit my ally. Okay, I want to roll initiative. Nope, just do your damage. Anyway,
this will come up in a moment.
Oh, will it?
So the cleric. Okay. Yeah, so the cleric has cantrip versatility.
Yes.
We talked about this before. Rectifying mistakes you made earlier. You're the poor person that took resistance. Swap it out. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Cleric spells. I don't have an issue with any of these spells. In your video, you criticized Powered Heal.
I did simply because, again, I don't have a problem with clerics having access to Power Word Heal. I maybe just have a problem with Power Word Heal itself. I just don't... If I compare Power Word Heal to Mass Heal, I think it doesn't seem like the same level of spell.
Yes. I agree. I don't think it's a reason why it shouldn't be on the spell list.
Okay.
Because trap spells are a reality of the game. Sadly, the developers did cast find traps to locate them, so this is why we're left with this game.
What I would recommend to players is, if you want to avoid trap spells, there's a YouTube channel I know of that will help you determine which spells those are. Hint, hint. Wink, wink.
That's curious. That seems like a temple of knowledge.
Yeah, it does. Okay. Again, thematically, I have no problem with Power Word Heal. I think I explained why I have an issue with Power Word Heal in the video, and it's not that I don't think clerics should have access. I just don't think it's a good spell, and I just don't like that. I don't like trap spells. That's why part of the reason why I do what I do.
I'd prefer if every spell was good.
Yeah. And there's no reason you can't have two good 9th level healing spells that do vastly different things, but it would require a redesign of the spell. Okay. We would get into a black hole there if we start talking about that.
Yeah.
Thematically, I don't have a problem with Power Word Heal on the list. Channel Divinity, Harness Divine Power. This one I got pushback on. Of the various things that I mentioned in the video, this is probably the one I got the most disagreement on, because I was concerned, not necessarily at high levels, but at second level, I thought giving a cleric access, because Channel Divinity, depending on the kind of cleric you play, and depending on the kind of enemies you're facing, is something that's often you don't choose. And being able to, if you say take 2 short rests at second level, giving a cleric 5 first level spells when other classes in the game just can't access that kind of spellcasting. I didn't understand why you would make a cleric better at spellcasting than any other class. But again, I will say that I try to review my comments, and this was the one that more people disagreed with me than any other thing I mentioned.
Okay, so Chris, I'll make this easy on you.
Okay. Oh, good. Oh, thank God.
Yeah. Repent. Just admit you're wrong. Yeah.
Can you ease my concern? I've mentioned what my concern is. Why is my concern invalid?
Okay. So, you just said with the rolling initiative thing that we assume that we're all adults here and we don't game the system.
Right.
So we will discard the possibility of a cleric using first level spells and then spamming short rests to get them back and cast.
I'm not talking about spamming. Right. I'm just talking about normal short rests.
Okay. So we're all responsible adults. And we have 2 different clerics at second level. One of them is a nature cleric and one of them is a light cleric. One of them will get to use their channel divinity 2 or 3 times for a spell or for an effect that deals AoE damage 2d10 plus their cleric level. So it's like 12 damage in an AoE. It's basically better than Shatter.
Okay, but we're comparing subclass to subclass.
Yes, but that is very important.
But we're not going to have a life cleric and a nature cleric likely in the same campaign. It's far more likely if you're playing a nature cleric that the other players in the campaign are playing different classes. So I think it's more valid to compare Harness Divine Power from cleric to, say, let's say Land Druid, than saying to a life cleric or a light cleric or whatever, because I think that's the play that sees. I think it's a more valid comparison. I mean, and because it tends to be more relevant in most games. And if I'm playing the Land Druid, and I picked Land Druid instead of Moon Druid because I wanted to be really focused on spells, and I like the idea that I get extra spells, but now the cleric gets more spells than me. Can you explain to me how I'm having more fun?
Okay. The thing is, would it be broken if a light cleric was going through the same adventure? Because light cleric's channel divinity is stronger than a first level spell.
That's true, but it is different, right? There's a difference between
it's
spells.
It's less versatile.
Now this is an entire. I'm going to be doing a video on this actually very soon, talking about special abilities versus spells. The versatility of spellcasting is hard to compare to. You can do this thing once because. Just because that one thing happens to be comparable to a spell doesn't mean it's as good as having a spell slot.
Yes, though to be fair, Light Cleric's Channel Divinity at second level is a save or die against many, many enemies. So it's pretty good compared to spells, especially cleric spells.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're fighting undead, this isn't an issue, right?
Well, it's not about Well, if you're fighting undead, this isn't an issue. You're using turn undead. But the thing is, Light Cleric can use it all the time. Light Cleric gets an effect that is usually stronger than a first level spell.
Yep.
And Light Cleric doesn't break the game.
Yeah. Well, I will say that I've played with Light Clerics, and at second level, that's pretty tough. I have issues with the scaling of that ability because I find at second level it's maybe too much. At high levels, it's not enough. I'll get into that when I get into cleric variants. I'll be addressing that one.
What I see is I actually had a nature cleric in a campaign of mine in Princes of the Apocalypse.
I have also played a nature cleric,
and she used Channel Divinity 3 times on the course of level 1 to 15.
Okay. Now, when it comes to giving options for Channel Divinity, that I don't have as big an issue with as providing a spell slot. If you could say that pick one spell, first level spell. Let me make a suggestion and let me bounce it off you. Let's say we were to say pick a first level spell that you know. You may on a short rest recover a spell slot, or you can maybe use your channel. How about this? You can use your Channel Divinity to cast that spell. Would you have a problem with that?
It's still all right.
Because I wouldn't have a problem with that. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
I feel like at level 2 specifically, it might be a problem. But the thing is, like it might be a problem.
Because
it
to me,
isn't.
That would, if you're talking about balancing against light clerics, that balances against light clerics. Because you're saying you get one thing you can choose to do with your Channel Divinity that you will get to do. I don't have a problem with clerics being able to use their Channel Divinity. But being able to use your Channel Divinity and you can choose amongst this list of things you can do with it, I think is of greater power than people realize.
I feel like at second level, you still have some versatility to it. And it's going to be something like Healing Word, Bless. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
That's
sure.
my versatility
And let's say it's Bless. I got no problem with that.
Yeah.
Bless is in line with what a light cleric can do. In fact, it's probably less than what a light cleric can do because it's using your concentration, and it tends to be a more subtle effect.
Yes.
I've got no issue If the issue, if this was, Cleric can use their Channel Divinity to cast the Bless spell, I'd be okay with that.
Okay. I think the versatility is actually really nice, and also the fact that you gain.
Well, I agree. It's really nice. I just think,
Yeah.
So nice that why the hell would I ever play a land druid?
Okay. So one very important thing is that at level 2, there can be drastic power differences between classes already.
Oh yes, yeah.
So, I'm not sure if
But
just the level 3 experience is that important to it.
I think it's extremely important because that's when you get it. This isn't something they're adding at a higher level. And if it was something they were adding at a higher level, I would probably look at it differently. But they're adding it at a level where it wasn't needed. And not only was it not needed, we're talking about assuming that we have spellcasters beyond ourselves, beyond our cleric in the game. I can now cast more spells than them.
Mm-hmm. The thing again is, we're casting Bless or Healing Word with this, right?
Most of the time. Well, clerics have a number of good spells, but
at higher levels, we're going to be casting Guiding Bolt or Command with it.
I'm not sure I agree, but okay.
What would you cast at level 8?
With my first level slots?
Yes.
I'm still casting Healing Word sometimes. It depends on the situation. There's a number of choices, but that's the issue, in my opinion.
Yes. I feel like no one is gonna feel bad for being saved by the Cleric's Channel Divinity alternate use.
Okay. Alright, so...
I feel like this is not gonna encroach on anyone, and I think it feels really bad to not be able to use your Channel Divinity because you picked Nature or Knowledge, and so forth.
And I agree with that.
This feature is very important, and it's also super important to look at the fact that it's only first level spell slots. So when you then compare it to the land druid, to the wizard,
at higher
those can
levels,
regain second levels, etc. So
well,
it's just
not
the second level, second level is kind of all over the place.
Okay.
Kind of again by the necessity of leveling up. We needed to give it to people at some point. So should we give it to them when they also get second level spells?
No, I think what should happen is if we're going to give Channel Divinity... okay, so we're going to agree to disagree here. I will agree that it would be nice to have an alternate use of Channel Divinity, but I think it shouldn't be a spell slot. That's my opinion. But I recognize lots of people disagreed with me.
To be sure, if you change it to, hey, pick a first level cleric spell, as an action, use your Channel Divinity, cast that spell. That's great. Okay. And then, on a level up, change the spell.
Oh, sure, for sure. Yeah,
because we learned that is a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. So if we were in the same campaign, we could agree on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on. So the next one is Blessed Strikes, and my main issue with this one was that it could just be added to any spell, which means we're going to get to use it every round to increase our damage, because clerics do damage. That's what they do. And if we talk about Divine Strike or Potent Spellcasting, we're not applying it every round. This one we are. So it's just better, right?
In a way. Like it's
so, okay. So in what way isn't it better? How about that?
Okay, so what is the magnitude? Normally we gain either a D8 or 5 from a Wisdom modifier damage on our action, and now we get the D8 even if we miss because we have Spirit Guardians running.
It's worse than that. Because we get our Wisdom modifier or our D8 on either a cantrip, which we're casting at level 8 or higher, or a weapon strike.
Yes.
So these aren't just any actions. These are very specific actions, and ones you're not necessarily taking all the time.
Yes. And so when you're taking these actions, the damage difference is 1 damage per round. So Blessed Strikes is better, 100%. I think if one is concerned about Blessed Strikes being better in that sense, limit it to your turn. Then it's still like a bit better.
That would, yeah, okay. So because Spirit Guardians, I see what you're saying there.
Yeah. So I'm saying, in my experience, this feature is going to add 1 DPR to clerics.
Yeah. Now I should mention, adding a D8 isn't like massive, right? I don't want to indicate that if you allow this, your game's going to break. I don't want to give that impression. I just think it's a boost. And even if it's a small boost, I don't know if it was a necessary boost or necessary for a cleric at that level.
So the important thing here is, I don't think the intent is to up the power of the cleric. The intent is to allow clerics to use weapons or cantrips and maybe switch liberally between the two.
So why wouldn't you instead give just clerics the choice between Divine Strike or Potent Spellcasting?
You might want to swap depending on the situation. Like, for example, when you need a ranged attack, you're not going to make a weapon attack.
And I think this was actually what I had planned or had suggested for Blessed Strikes, have it limited to weapon strikes and cantrips.
Yes. Something along those lines. I think there's no problem with allowing this feature because the magnitude of the power increase doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I agree. We're not breaking the game if you allow Blessed Strikes. This is not one is like, this isn't like the Magical Inspiration.
I think it could be toned down to be more comparable to those two features.
I agree. Okay.
but I wouldn't like.
Again, I should. When I talk about things, I tend to be passionate, right?
Yeah.
And if you watch my videos, you know that's not. So when I see this and I go, well, that's just more powerful, and I don't think the cleric needed it at that level, I'm going to speak about that in a passionate way. But I should mention that's because I am a passionate person about these things. Yeah. That doesn't mean I think if you allow this, your game is ruined. So I'll say that now. If you allow this, I don't think your game is ruined. I think it adds a little bit to the cleric at a point they didn't need it. And I think the obvious fix for me would be to limit it to cantrips and weapon strikes, and then it's comparable to the things it's replacing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would also say that the magnitude of the power increase probably isn't worth my time to redesign the feature. Just allow it someone to use it.
All right.
It's 1 damage per round. That's not the problem.
Okay, let's move on. So we're getting into the Druid now.
Yes.
So cantrip versatility, same thing. We don't need to talk about this again. Neither of us have an issue here.
Yes.
And Druid spells, I thought they were pretty much all okay. I thought there were some that were significant additions, but I didn't have necessarily a problem. One thing I find with the Druid is that other than summoning, there's some places I'd like to have a little more versatility. And this does add it, but I don't think it adds it in ways that gave me a negative emotional reaction. What was your view on these?
I see a couple of amazing standout spells that just make me... They spark joy.
Thunderstep?
We see a couple of spells that have an action casting time, do something, and don't require concentration.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Then we see, in my opinion, the 2 strongest rituals in the game, Augury and Divination.
Find Familiar. Anyway, I had to add
Find Familiar. So, I agree that Find Familiar is very strong. I've never seen a party not TPK because of Find Familiar. So Find Familiar, it might just be like bias that the result of the divination rituals is more significant at times. Find Familiar is way more the consistent option.
Oh,
But
I
I've
see. I see
seen
what you're saying.
divination and augury prevent a number of TPKs.
I would say that augury and divination are situationally very powerful, depending on your DM. Augury and divination are rituals
Yes.
that are very DM dependent, and I've seen different DMs react to them in very different ways. Some of them unhelpfully. So it really depends on your DM, I think.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
I think those spells are tremendously strong. But what the two most interesting things that I see are Revivify, which means there is now another way to get Revivify at level 5 that isn't a Cleric.
Yeah.
And this phenomenon will go throughout the entire UA. We see in this UA many features that the Cleric has that are
Revivify
given
is
to
everywhere.
other classes.
Yeah, that's true.
Revivify is then also on the Ranger, which is kind of a consistency thing, and also why not? No one complains about being revivified.
No.
Except the Warlock who wants to swap their Mystic Arcanum and threw themselves off a cliff
Okay.
to be able to roll a new Warlock of the same subclass.
Yeah.
And
I
brother
agree.
of the current Warlock. Yeah.
There are some very nice additions here, but I don't have a problem with them. I would allow them.
The nicest addition of all to the spell list is in the left column.
Okay, I get what you're saying, because druids don't have good attack cantrips at range.
Yes, so just for people that don't have the document, it's Acid Splash. It's a 60-foot range cantrip. There's only a single other 60-foot range cantrip on the druid spell list. It's Frostbite, which is a Constitution saving throw. This is just nice.
Though
You don't have to get super close to it. It's not a super big deal, but it's huge convenience.
I will say I don't think Frostbite is a terrible spell.
I think it's good. I picked it on my Sorcerer. It's
Yeah, it's okay.
better than Sorcerer.
It's okay. It's kind of the vicious mockery for arcane casters, and I guess for druids as well. But it's okay. It's and Acid Splash isn't a fantastic spell either. It's okay. And I see how it's an addition, a significant addition to the druid, just because they have so few options when it comes to ranged cantrips. I mean, technically speaking, I guess you can do a Thorn Whip up to 15 feet, but if you want to cast at any significant range at low levels, I'm all for adding another option. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move on to Wild Companion.
Yeah.
Now, Wild Companion. My issue now, I should mention, I made a mistake in the video in that, or just in reading it, that I didn't realize the duration here. So that does change things. So what's pointed out is that the wild shape, if you're adventuring, a moon druid is paying essentially a higher opportunity cost to use this than other druids are. Because their wild shape isn't as good, objectively not as good, which is true. My opinion on it remains unchanged, though, and the reason for that is because I still think it's still a boost to the Moon Druid, exactly where the Moon Druid was already an issue. And if I was to explain that really quickly, then I would say Fireball and Lightning Bolt. I consider Fireball a better spell than Lightning Bolt. But if you were to give me a spell that you can do Fireball or Lightning Bolt with it, I'd say that's objectively better than Fireball. Does that make sense?
Yes, but when is the wild shape of Moon Druid impactful? At levels 1 to 4. Well, and then at level 10 again, right?
Level 2 to 4. Yeah.
That is the first problem. You have to exist an absolutely miserable level 1 while other people have fun with the game. But yeah, level 2 to 4, that's where it's a problem. If we look at the duration of the Find Familiar, it only lasts an hour. Except at level 4.
Yeah, half your druid level. Same as the wild shape. Yeah.
So at level 4, it becomes 2 hours. So as a Moon Druid, you're never going to use, at level 2 and 3, you're never going to use this to get a Find Familiar and then turn into a bear, and then not have a second bear.
Yeah, that's what happens. You give up the second bear.
Yeah, you're never going to do that.
I would say yes, you will. Do you want an example?
Yes?
Sure. Okay. I have an entire video on the use of Find Familiar. Take any of those options where a Find Familiar solves a problem, and if that's the challenge, and the challenge isn't mulling things with my paws, then the Find Familiar is objectively better in that situation, and I would totally use it.
Oftentimes, that scenario would have been solved by, oh no, druids can't fly at that level.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit, but it's also just...
And again, my fix for this, in my opinion, is the issue is the level. At second level, Moon Druids, the last thing they need is a boost in their versatility. They're already very powerful. They're already more powerful, in my opinion, than any other class at that level.
Yes.
And I would love to balance the subclasses against the subclasses more at that level. But that's not my main concern. My main concern isn't about Moon Druids being more powerful than Land Druids. My main issue is that Moon Druids are more powerful than other players that you're playing with. And now we're going to give them additional versatility on top of that. And I think that's not where you need it at second level. If you want to give the Moon Druid use of this ability, give it to them at level 5, right? Call it part of the advancement of Wild Shape. Wild Shape gets better with each level. Now, at 5th level, you can use it to get a Find Familiar. Then I wouldn't have an issue with it. My issue is that they're putting it at the exact moment that you don't want to be... The Moon Druid is already too powerful. We shouldn't be doing anything to boost Moon Druids at second level.
I think that... So, for non-Moon Druids, first step. Non-Moon Druid and non-Spore Druid. The Circle of Spores from Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. Those two have amazing uses for the Wild Shape. The other Druids have Wild Shape on their feature list, and quite similar to many Cleric subclasses, they're never going to use it.
Yeah, and I will say, if I'm playing, I'm going to say Land Druid just because it's the player's handbook version. You give Wild Companion to a Land Druid, I think it's a great addition. My only issue is that currently, at least 3/4 of the Druids I've seen played are Moon Druids. And so the Druid that's always getting played is the one that didn't need the boost at second level, and this gives them a boost at second level.
Okay. I feel like the boost is insignificant, though. If you give everyone in Canada or in the US $10,000,
thank you. Please
then
do.
People that don't have a lot of money will profit more from those $10,000 than Bill Gates.
Yes, but this is
Bill
not...
Gates is a Moon Druid.
I don't think this is a fair analogy, because what we're doing is reducing the ratio of difference between them and everybody else. But we're not giving this to everybody. We're only giving this to Druids. And if you're playing the Moon Druid, chances are nobody else in your party is a Druid. So they're not getting that $10,000. I'm getting it, and the other Druids are getting it, and everybody else gets nothing. So this is like giving Bill Gates $10,000 and all plumbers $10,000, but everybody else gets nothing. But we made plumbers better. Isn't making plumbers better okay? No, it's not. It's not okay, because you're giving money to the guy who's the richest, and the people who needed it in comparison to that guy aren't getting it. And in this case, we're giving something to a Moon Druid when everyone else in the party gets nothing.
Yeah, but now the plumber's stuff.
I'm sorry?
Because you didn't want to give Bill Gates $10,000.
Yeah, well, maybe they should have fixed my toilet a bit better then.
Yeah, so what I think is that, yes, Moon Druid gets Find Familiar. Yes, that's an increase. But the game is already broken because there's a Moon Druid at second level. It doesn't matter.
So your argument is it's already broken, so why not break it a little further?
I'm saying this doesn't break it further. Broken is a binary state,
Okay.
right? Like either my adventure works or it doesn't. And if you have a moon druid, it doesn't.
So
So if the moon druid now has an owl,
by that logic, if we also give moon druids the ability to cast ninth level spells, well, they were already broken.
at second level, I
Yeah.
don't think it makes a difference.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. You know what? I'm
There
not
will
gonna.
be
You
no
know what?
perceptible difference.
I guess I can't argue with that. Moon druids are. I mean, if you haven't played in a campaign with a moon druid at second level, it's disgusting. Like it really is game breaking. But that's, I guess, another issue. When it comes to Wild Companion against anyone who's not a moon druid, I think it's good. So I'll give you
Yeah.
that. I'll give you that.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you're concerned about upping the power of Moon Druid, um, just say you can't take this option if you're Moon Druid.
Okay. I'm with that. You can't take this option if you're a
Um,
moon druid.
yeah, that's
I'm
pretty
good. I'm
simple.
good with that. Okay.
But I do actually think if you let Moon Druids cast Meteor Swarm once per short rest, only at level 2, it does not change the experience of the adventures, except getting past this point this level more quickly.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Moon druids are broken. Everyone. Well, they're
At
not.
second level specifically.
Well, and again, their power curve is really weird. But anyway,
Yeah.
let's move on from there to the
I
fighting.
think it's kind of weird though, because if you then look further up, Moon Druid doesn't get to wild shape at like level 5. Like it gets really weird in the level 5 to 9 area, right?
They have a weird power curve. Yeah, they go from
Yeah.
the most powerful class in the game to probably bottom half, and then
Yeah.
they recover, and then at 20th level they break the game again.
And this is where Find Familiar would kind of help them. Not at level 20, I don't think it matters. But especially in these weird power dips, just having a familiar and having a useful wild shape, because then Moon Druid is in the same boat as the others.
Okay, well then
Wild shape doesn't feel amazing.
then what about Wild Companion as it is? Unless you're a Moon Druid, then you get it at level 5.
Yeah, I don't think that makes it into rules text because it's super clunky. But if you want to
Yeah.
do that for your home game, I think that's a fair thing to do.
Okay.
I don't think it's necessary because like it's just a familiar.
Okay. Oh, the pain. Okay, fighter. Let's talk about fighter.
It's just a familiar on top of 100 HP at level 2.
Oh no! You said it's just a familiar, and I'm hurt. So we're gonna move on.
I have more for you.
Oh,
So fighter.
Okay, yes.
Okay. So fighter. Fighters can take Polar Master. That's just a D4, and they get superior technique. That's only a D6.
Yep.
Right.
And you know what? When I went back through and I said, how I would change this, my view on superior technique is I'm not sure, and I would probably play test it as it is, and I'm not sure if it is too powerful or not powerful enough because you're only getting 1 die per short rest, and that goes real fast. So yeah,
Yes.
I actually don't have a lot to say. If you want to say your piece on superior technique, you go ahead.
Yeah.
But my view on it at this moment is I don't know. So okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like it's not good, but I also feel like there's a significant chance that I'm missing something. But I don't see how you can, unless you're dipping fighter, right? But even then, meh.
Yeah, it's
Like,
one
dipping fighters, rogue, superior technique, brace for an opportunity attack. But how much more broken are you really compared to a rogue than dipping 3 levels of fighter, getting the full battle master? Probably doesn't change a whole lot.
I'd have to think about it a lot of ways to know if there's any way to really take advantage of this. I think it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just play with it and let me know what I missed.
Yeah, I think it needs playtest. I do think it needs playtest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maneuver versatility, really nice. Rectify mistakes.
I like it. Okay, maneuver options. So ambush. I don't have a problem with this ability, balance-wise. I do think it's kind of an obvious dip for something like an assassin, and I think it might benefit a multi-classed assassin fighter more than straight fighter. That's really my only issue with it.
Yes, and at that point you have to say, is assassin fighter the problem at the moment.
No, I'll give you that. No, it's not.
So it's an
Yeah,
all right thing to
so it's
use.
okay. Let's. My recommendation was to keep ambush in.
Yeah.
Bait and switch, I like. Do you like bait and switch?
Yeah. Neat.
I thought I
Why
thought
not?
I thought it was very cool. Actually, it was probably my favorite of the maneuvers. And I love the fact that you actually can provide an armor class bonus for a round rather than just while you're moving.
Hell yeah.
Brace I didn't have a problem with. I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very. It reminds me of Riposte. I mean, it's a little
Yeah.
different, but it's similar. Restraining strike. This one I had an issue with. Specifically, I have an issue with the last sentence of this one. And I think my fix, my personal opinion is you should just delete the last sentence and it would be fine. What's your opinion?
Okay. So I read this, and I initially had the same reaction as you. And then I went and tried to find ways to abuse it, ways to build a build around it. And
Uh,
I again encountered there's two different games phenomenon. So in a game without feats, I think this is dumb and strong and unparalleled. In a game with feats, we have opportunity costs to using this playstyle. So what kind of character uses Restraining Strike? It's this fighter that uses a single weapon, and it needs to be a one-handed or versatile weapon. Because if I then grapple someone, I can't use my greatsword on them. Which means this is locking me out of Great Weapon Master. I wouldn't be able to reload my hand crossbow if I somehow made that work, so it's locking me out of Sharpshooter. So the only thing that kind of leaves me is Polar Master, but I'm also sacrificing the bonus action attack, so I'm losing most of the benefit of that feat. So
when you use this, yes.
yeah, so if I use this, I lose feats, and that's very big.
Well, it depends on your fighter
And
build. Not every fighter build. So with barbarians, you mentioned Great Weapon Master, and I mentioned that pretty
yeah,
much. If I see a barbarian played, they smash stuff, and if you want to smash stuff, Greater Weapon Master is pretty essential if it's available. With fighters, I find some fighters play that style. Some fighters do sword and shield. Some fighters do archery. My issue with this one was specifically, I find that the restrained condition isn't something that we should be. It could, in a lot of battles, I don't think it'd be an issue. But if we're fighting one tough enemy, we're going to be able to create the restrained condition in a combat where that one enemy was supposed to be a challenge for the entire party, but we're going to now give all party members advantage on attacks against them. They're going to have disadvantages on all their attacks through the expenditure of one superiority die.
yes.
And that seemed kind of like a whole kind of. Now this isn't universal. This is just in a certain kind of combat now becomes non-challenging.
Yes.
If you lock this, I mean, there's always the chance you'll fail. And now when we get to higher levels, there's spellcasters can do the same thing. It's not it's, but what I would think is certainly at first level, being able to lock a powerful enemy with the restrained condition with such a low resource cost, I see issues with that. I see significant issues with that. I see certain kinds of challenges no longer being challenging.
So one important thing I'd point out is that this maneuver supports the iconic character that uses a longsword and no shield,
Yep.
which currently is unviable.
No, it's not.
Like there might be something very very niche.
Are you aware that there are already there are optimized builds built around grappling already? It usually involves a shove to get somebody prone, then you grapple, and then they're stuck in the prone condition, which would give you
Yes.
advantage on attacks against them. But
Yes.
yeah, it requires it's not so easy, right? And it does
Yeah.
require that you build your character in a certain way. But this one
Yeah.
really makes it cheap, right? I don't know
This
why
makes it
I don't know why I would ever play one of those grapple builds if Restraining Strike's in the game.
okay. I'll give you a reason.
Okay.
Because Bob in your party is playing an archer, and he's sad because he's in a party of 5 people, and 3 or 4 of them are melee, and he's the only ranged.
Yeah.
Like, 3 are melee, 1 is saving throw based caster, and he's the only ranged. And grapple prone is super strong, especially if you're like a barbarian with expertise in athletics.
Okay.
And grapple prone is also super easy to inflict. It's a bit harder than this, but it's rather easy to inflict.
Yeah. And it screws the archer
has-
because they have disadvantage
Yeah.
then. And I'm going to say something that's going to upset a lot of my viewers. Boo-hoo archers. I mean, you already got everything. I don't really care. I mean, I'm sorry, but archers, you guys are fine. You guys are already ruling the damage field. I don't mind if we're giving something to melee characters that you don't get. Too bad. That's sorry, boo-hoo.
I think that is a mathematically correct statement.
But I just made a lot of enemies, and I got a few downvotes. But anyway.
But I don't think Bob is happy about it. So
Yeah.
I've seen this in multiple parties where they have a lot of melee people and then one ranged person, and grapple prone is such a good strategy for those melee people, especially with Great Weapon Master and all that. But then you're kind of excluding that one person, and I want to say that grapple prone is at a similar opportunity cost to inflict compared to Restraining Strike. Because Restraining Strike, it's 1 check less. Like, you gain 1 attack, but gaining 1 attack for a maneuver is what maneuvers do.
Yeah.
Because you could be playing a Polar Master fight or something, right?
And again,
so you're sacrificing the bonus action.
You take away the final sentence, I don't have a problem with this.
Yeah. So I think the Restrained, if you just grapple it, I'm never going to use this ability.
I would. If I'm going to consider a grapple build, this is something I would consider. It's not necessarily a must-have if it didn't have the final sentence, but it is still something I would consider. Because
it feels like a very weak trip attack.
Being able to grapple as a bonus action is something I'd want to do with a grapple character.
But I feel like grapple characters aren't that good. Like, there's the best possible grapple characters.
They have their place. I don't think they're broken. I think they're just fine.
Yeah.
But they fill a niche right now that this kind of invalidates, in my opinion.
What does it support it? Didn't it just make your kind of effective, but kind of pisses off teammates, but kind of doesn't work all that well strategy? And take it to a level that is comparable with the Crossbow Expert Sharpshooter, with the Polar Master, with the Great Weapon Master, Polar Master
I'm not sure we should be comparing maneuvers to feats.
Well, but we have to look at the ultimate output that we get out of the character, right?
Yeah. But I can take... Yeah, so what you're saying is because you're not taking or getting the advantage of those other feats, being able to inflict the restraint condition, you don't see an issue with.
Yeah, like, you lose a ton, so I think this deserves playtest.
Yeah.
Based on the merit that it supports a type of character that at the moment is not comparable to the Polar Master, the Great Weapon Master, the Sharpshooter.
Well, it will absolutely receive playtest now that it's in Unearthed Arcana. My opinion is the final version will not have the restrained condition. We'll see.
We'll see.
I bet you it won't be there. We'll see.
One thing that you describe with the single enemy encounter is, and that it threatens to trivialize them. In those kinds of encounters, in the grand scheme of things, it's going to take like 3 turns to take this thing down. And you work with the entire party. So like using 2 attacks to grapple prone the thing. Maybe you fail once. So you need 3 attacks as a party to grapple prone the thing. And then you get the same effect. I don't think it changes the gameplay experience much. And I think that this phenomenon is already in the game with the Monk. Monk is a terrible class, but it does one thing, and that is it stops Dungeon Masters from doing dumb one-enemy encounters. That is the merit of the class. And Restraining Strike does a similar thing. So it kind of invalidates combats that shouldn't exist in the first place.
All right. Yeah. Oh, okay.
It supports a character concept that lacks support, but is super big in fantasy, right? Like, so many people just use a longsword, nothing else. So
that's true, and I would like a option to make that kind of character something viable optimally, because you're right.
Yeah.
We see it. I mean, Aragorn. His point out, he has a 2-handed weapon. Well, no, not really. It's a one-handed weapon that he can use with. It's versatile, but that's not really an optimal character, and I'd love to see that. Having him grapple with his other hand, I don't think is thematically within line with the kind of character I see missing. I would prefer to see just a way to have sword and nothing in the other hand be viable in a way more in line with what I read in fiction or see on this big screen. But I think we can move on. We both said our piece here. Silver Tongue. Now, balance-wise, I don't have a problem here. I don't know why it's here. I just don't know why it's here. Fighters are, it's in the name, fighter. So why are we giving them things that aren't fighter?
Okay. This exists alongside Studios Eye, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's talk to them about them together. Save some time, because it is. Okay. I have the same, confusion with both of them being here.
Yes. Okay. So the easiest cop out is to read the flavor text of the Battle Master, where the designers tell us what is a Battle Master. And the last sentence reads, "Not every fighter absorbs the lessons of history, theory, and artistry that are reflected in the Battlemaster archetype, but those who do are well-rounded fighters of great skill and knowledge." So we see many fighter subclasses that are intended to have more to them than just fighting. They are also supposed to be worldly. We also see this with the samurai fighter, who at 7th level, they gain a bonus to the persuasion equal to the wisdom modifier. So you never have enough stats to actually use that feature, but it's supposed to boost the feature. Samurai also at 3rd level, I think, gains proficiency in something like history, insight, persuasion. One of those. We then also have the Purple Dragon Knight, all the way back in the Sword Coast Adventurers Guide, who gains expertise in persuasion. So this concept of a fighter that can do something outside of initiative has always existed within the game, and I think it very much exists within fiction as well. Like, a King Arthur is a fighter, but he's more than just proficient in persuasion.
You know something? I'm going to cut you short. You've convinced me.
Mm-hmm.
You've convinced me.
Okay.
All right. So Silver Tongue, Studious Eye, keep him in.
Okay.
Snipe. I like Snipe.
Snipe?
You like Snipe too?
Yeah, I think it's okay to be there. I'm kind of confused whether I think I need more options to burn my superiority dice in a single round. I can do that already, but
what I like about Snipe is if I want to play a fighter that doesn't use a hand crossbow, it gives me another bonus action option. Like an archery character. Yeah, if I'm gonna have a longbow, I like that.
It comes up rarely, because the thing is, it only comes up when you really need an additional attack this turn. Because in general, precision attack is gonna do the same thing but better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't think Snipe is one of the more powerful maneuvers, but I'd consider it if I was playing a longbow character. I'd consider taking it.
I think it gives you attack when you really need it. It's neat.
Yeah, okay.
Why not?
I'm thinking that let's skip ahead to the fighting styles because I think they're appropriate when we're talking about fighters.
Okay.
Let's do that, and then we'll talk about Then
Let's
we're
start from
talking
the
about
bottom.
then we're talking about fighters, right? So
Let's start from the bottom.
start from the bot. Well, let's talk about martial versatility first. Is that all right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think
we had that already. Oh no, we had
maneuver versatility and martial versatility. I mentioned this in the video. I like it, and I explained why. What's your opinion?
No, I prefer being on useless features. That's what I always said.
So we're in agreement.
In fact, I don't think you should be able to use any class features at all, ever.
And frankly, if you are using any of these UAs, the versatility ones where you can switch stuff out, I think those would be the first ones I'd gravitate to allowing, because I really think it's safe. These almost don't need playtest. I think it's just I'd be very shocked if there was a problem. But yeah, let's. So we agree there.
Yeah.
Let's go into the style options. Unarmed fighting. Yeah. So now, was it somebody? I don't know if it was you or somebody else who mentioned. What if you called this something else than unarmed fighting and just called it like dirty fighter or something? Yeah. If you change the thematics of it, I don't have a problem with it. My issue with it is if it's called unarmed fighting, that's what it should be boosting.
Yes. So what you're referring to is the weird interaction that while you have the target grappled, whenever you hit them with a melee attack, which includes swords, you deal extra damage, and you think it should only be the fist or the feature. Should have a different flavor.
Or some way, increase the grapple damage or something. Just make it unarmed. That's basically it. If it's called unarmed fighting, make it unarmed.
Okay, so I like the feature. I kind of agree that it might need a rename. I think it's good that the D4 procs, because again, the thing we see with Restraining Strike, I'm very intrigued by that kind of character concept, and I think it should exist within the game, and this supports it, and it supports it in a way more fulfillingly than dueling or great weapon fighting or defense. Defense is just kind of boring, even if it's good. And when you have the longsword, where sometimes you attack with two hands, and then when you have someone grappled, you attack with one hand, then you don't have a fighting style at the moment. Yeah. In fact, you never want to use your longsword with two hands, because with one hand in dueling, it's just better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Versatility.
And that's sad.
Oh, I agree. And since it wasn't you, I just want to, whoever it was who said dirty fighting instead of unarmed fighting, I'm sorry I don't remember who you were, but I appreciate you giving me that comment.
So there's one really, really minute thing, and that is, would you say that the D4, that when you successfully start a grapple, you can deal 1d4 bludgeoning damage to the grappled creature?
Mm-hmm.
Is that damage from an attack?
No. Now that I read it, no, it's not from an attack. It would be.
I think that might be an oversight, because what I can do now is, and this is high level stuff, but take creatures like liches or demi-liches. They're entirely magical. Well, demi-liches. Okay, let's just use liches.
The mechanics on demi-liches are weird enough. Let's avoid that.
Yeah, you put the lich into an anti-magic field. You can't do anything anymore. I think he can disrupt life because it's not magical, but I'm not sure. But still, you put the lich into an anti-magic field, but that doesn't trivialize the encounter as of now because they're they're immune to non-magical attacks damage. And since in the anti-magic field your magical weapons will be non-magical, you can't damage the lich. So currently you have to burn the lich with a torch if you use that strategy, which is going to get outpaced. This technically allows you to just grapple the lich all the time, which you succeed every time, basically, because you have a 6 modifier at that point. So basically you can deal 1d4 damage per attack to the lich while circumventing that immunity. I'm not sure if that's intended or if it's a problem.
I don't see it
But
being a problem. It's D4. You know, like you
yeah,
said, you could burn them with a torch.
yeah, you can
Yeah,
currently burn them with a torch. So that is the
but
only thing
but
that makes me think it's
that
not a problem.
but that is interesting that you mentioned that because yeah, I didn't even think about that. But technically speaking, you're right. Uh, you know, you read that and I almost comprehend it as it does D4 damage, but that's technically not the way it's written. I think in most cases that's not going to make a difference, and
Yeah,
I think
the,
in the cases where it is, I think it's minor enough that I wouldn't be too concerned
yeah,
about it.
super niche. Thrown weapon fighting, I think it's neat. I
Yep.
think it supports a playstyle that didn't exist. Again, we have this two games kind of thing going on, where in a game with feats, this sucks. In a game without feats, this is pretty decent. This
Well,
is
I will say
like an
that
archer with more AC.
what I will say is like I tend to go concept first and then I do a build, and I actually had a friend we were playing and his character died and he was saying I want to build a new character and he's like what about a knife fighter like a knife thrower is there a way to build that and I thought about it and I thought about it nope. I mean, you can play a rogue and you can throw a knife around and get a sneak attack on it, but
Um,
there's no good way to build that concept. So anything that moves us in that direction, I'm for.
yeah. I mean, there's weird stuff. You can take the dual wielder feat, then at least you can draw two around, but
Yeah,
let's not get into that.
it doesn't work.
Interception,
Yeah,
yeah. Interception, you brought like a good point in the video. The scaling seems kind of off.
yeah. I mean,
Just basically immunity at low
I'd
levels.
be okay with this if it was like maybe a D4 plus your level or something like that. Something that is starts out slower and builds more aggressively.
Yeah, I think I think the formula needs a bit of change, but that is I love the concept. I'm so sad that protection is as bad as it is,
Yes, I
and
agree.
I love interception. And I think even though interception doesn't scale amazingly well, um, like take this at level 15 or something, right? Using a reaction every round to mitigate 10 damage,
It's terrible. Yeah, it's terrible. I
is
think.
it?
Yeah. Usually by that point, I mean, depending, I guess it depends on your build, but it is not uncommon to have really good things you can do with your reaction at high levels. Uh, and when we're talking about creatures that are doing 50, 60 hit points damage, sometimes even with a single attack, or with multiple attacks, being able to mitigate 10, I think is pretty minor. That's my opinion. Um,
I think it adds up.
Well, sure, it adds
So,
up.
so
But like when I look at what interception is doing at a battle when I'm fighting at first level, and I look at what interception is doing at a battle at 15th level, I see two very different abilities, and I don't think that's how fighting style should work.
yeah,
I would like to see something where it is uh, moderately effective at all levels. That's so
yeah,
it's a scaling issue for me, not a thematic issue.
yeah. One thing that I would love to see change about this, I would love for the formula to not include a die roll.
Well, we could do that. You could do that. You would just have to
Yeah,
the plus your proficiency
yeah,
bonus. I think is I hope that's not the way they go. I think that's a dumb way to go because proficiency bonus just scales so slowly.
hmm
But yeah, if we brought in some kind of mechanic that scaled much quicker, then yeah, you wouldn't necessarily. And the die roll technically is going to slow play down. And
yeah,
I'm generally in favor of rolling less dice, so I would have no issue with that either.
yeah. But I think the concept is neat. It just needs a bit of math tweaks,
I agree.
but nothing big.
Okay,
Blind fighting.
blind fighting. So
Uh,
this one, just to recap, I thought was more powerful than other combat styles, just because I can see like I mentioned Devil's Sight, but Devil's Sight only applies to darkness. This is applying to so many other things that it seemed like it was just too much. There was too much advantage being given, literally advantage, to uh, fighting characters that take this style that I'd be inclined to take it before other combat styles.
Yes. I think, again, both with this and Interception, we again see the two different games kind of thing with the feats. Because if you're a high-level fighter in a game without feats, you don't have a lot of ways to do a reaction.
Yeah.
Kind of depends on the subclass.
And
Interception might be super good.
I tend to make the assumption that most games play with feats, though I don't know that for a fact. But I suspect that unless you're playing with brand new players, that most campaigns would include feats. But I can't say that. Yeah.
According to tweets from Mike Mills, their market research indicates that just above half of the players play without feats.
Wow. Oh, players or campaigns?
Well, compare. I'm not sure.
Because I talk to people all the time who are telling me that I'm wrong about the monk, but whenever they talk about advancement, they're always talking about adding to dex or wisdom. They never talk about the feats they take. So I think there's a lot of campaigns where feats are allowed, where people aren't necessarily taking them. And frankly, with a lot of builds, I don't think that's necessarily a bad way to go anyway.
In another part, in the videos that are released around this Unearthed Arcana, Jeremy Crawford then stated that the players without feats are the silent majority. So I think that Wizards of the Coast has it on good information what kind of people are playing their game. And that it's not like no feats for your first campaign and then feats for everything else, so 90% of people are playing with feats. It's much more close to 50-50, apparently. And that brings problems. And we see this with blind fighting. So I did some maths on blind fighting. First up, if you play with feats, this is done with Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter.
Yeah, that's my first thought is that because, of course, whenever we're talking about advantage on attacks, any optimizer is immediately thinking, how can I make use of this with Sharpshooter? How can I make use of this with Great Weapon Master? I think that's pretty standard.
Yeah. And just for the record, for the average viewer, blind fighting, it's so strong because you can cast a fog cloud or a darkness spell, something that just makes everything heavily obscured so no one can see anything. If you then walk up to someone and you attack them, you have advantage on the attack roll because they can't see you. And normally you would have disadvantage because you can't see them, but blind fighting cuts that out. So you're attacking at advantage now. While using Great Weapon Master, this fighting style adds about 5 points of damage to every attack. And with 5 points of damage, I mean 5 points of damage that actually hit the target. And if we're talking real damage per round.
And if we're talking every attack, remember to with fighters, we're talking about multiple attacks and the potentials for action surges. So that could be 5 times a significant number. And another thing I'd point out too is if we're talking about it potentially being broken when combined with feats, I think if people are looking at an Unearthed Arcana as something they might want to play, I would almost bet those are campaigns where feats are already allowed. I don't think there's a lot of DMs who go, let's look at Unearthed Arcana, but no feats. I don't think that happens. I'd be shocked to see somebody who has that kind of campaign.
Jeremy Crawford actually mentioned those kinds of.
Well,
he said
Jeremy Crawford.
Basically he said there's people that don't want to interact with the feat system, but they're looking for new options. Now, I personally do not get why you would be that kind of person.
No, I mean, okay.
But if they exist, it's relevant for the company, right? Like they need to sell the game, and if people are playing the game differently than we are, then they must be accounted for when creating the game. Because if we're not going to do that, then we're not going to get any new books.
When I do these videos, they're centered on my viewers. And I'm betting any of my viewers who are looking at these already provide feats. If you don't, let me know in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear why. And don't just tell me you do. Tell me why you think feats shouldn't be allowed, but Unearthed Arcana variants should be allowed. I'd love to hear from you.
Because they like Monk.
Oh, God.
You should have gotten rid of those by now. So to compare, so this adds 5 points of damage that actually hit per attack while you have advantage. It obviously adds 0 points of damage when you don't have advantage. Because, like, you got yourself into the situation to, like, set up the fog cloud, etc. If you're not gaining advantage from the skill, then it's wasted. And you would be better off with, like, in that situation, when you're just doing straight rolls against someone, then you're not gaining any benefit, and you're gaining 0 damage from the fighting style. If there would have been another way to gain advantage on the attack rolls, say from a familiar or a fairy fire spell, or a greater invisibility, etc., then you also don't benefit from this.
I would agree. Yeah, that's a good point. Advantage doesn't stack with advantage. So if you already have advantage, this does nothing for you. Yeah.
So the big competing strongest fighting style is archery. And I put this same situation, and obviously there's a lot of assumptions, but basically I took archery, and archery's value was about 2 damage per attack that actually hit. So the difference is 3 points of damage. So this means that for blind fighting to surpass archery in effectiveness, you need to be attacking at advantage when archery isn't 37.5% of the time.
You did a lot more work on this than I did.
So this number is going to shift slightly when you attack different ACs, but I think it's like a good thing to keep in mind. Assuming you don't waste any combat actions, you need to be attacking at advantage 1 out of 3 attacks for this to be as good as archery, and you need to be attacking more than that to be better than archery. This might be actually difficult to set up. And also keep in mind that you have to do it with fog cloud. If you do it with darkness, you have to account for the fact that you could have instead cast Enlarge Reduce on yourself and done a d4 extra damage, which closes the gap even more. Enlarge Reduce is a terrible buff spell. But
I will point out, though, as well, if you're playing in a party and you're not playing by yourself, you're not necessarily the one casting the fog cloud.
That is true. I will raise you. If you're playing in a party, that is not the most broken thing you can do in this game.
Oh, I agree. Okay. Yeah. No. So blind fighting. My issue with it is I consider it more powerful than the other combat styles. Not that I consider it more broken than other things that already exist in the game.
I think you can quite reasonably reach this 37% mark in a game with feats. In a game without feats, this mark gets way closer to 50%.
Yeah,
and I think at that point it becomes challenging.
And when I'm looking at this stuff, first off, I tend to go by gut feeling, right? Like I look at it and I just kind of think about it rather than punch out the numbers. I just looked at it and I thought, this looks... I can see ways I could use this to be more effective than other combat styles. And I don't think... And that includes melee, and that includes ranged. And so then, should such a combat style exist? And in my opinion was no.
I think it's worth testing out. I'm not sure how broken it is. And I think what really surprised me that in a game without feats,
and I should mention that I'm always assuming feats when I do these videos. People are watching my videos; they're using feats, right? Because there's no point watching my videos if you don't use feats.
I mean, those are good. Like spells stay good.
Yes.
But,
okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, you should still watch my videos. But like when we're doing builds and stuff, I'm always using feats. Yeah.
So in a game without feats, it's much more closer to 50-50. So basically, you need to be attacking at advantage 50% of the time to outperform something like dueling.
and I'm not saying that if you're not playing with feats, this is broken. And I would have to think about that.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure it's worth my mental effort. When I was discussing these, I'm assuming feats.
I think it's
yeah.
worth testing out. I also think that it really supports the melee Hexblade Warlock. Not because you use it as the Warlock, but because maybe not your entire party is going to yell at you for casting Darkness in melee range.
Instead you cast Fog Cloud.
Well, you cast Darkness as the Warlock to like do your Devil Side shenanigans in melee range.
That's right.
But the fighter doesn't actually get messed up in what they're doing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So if somebody else is playing a Hexblade and you're playing a fighter, you could take blind fighting, and then you're going to get advantage from their darkness as well.
Yeah. And I think that the melee Hexblade really benefits from using that strategy.
Boy, I hate that if I'm a barbarian. Now the fighter has that over me too.
Okay, yeah, that is kind of a bad thing. But yeah, the other thing that I discovered in mathing this out is that a barbarian, thanks to reckless attack, basically gains 5 effective damage on every hit.
Until somebody puts up a fog cloud or a darkness.
Yeah. I mean, I just wish there weren't some weird YouTube channels that advocated for fog cloud.
Yeah, screw those guys.
No. Like, if enemies have advantage against your allies, cast fog cloud, and the barbarian's like, "What are you doing? This is what I wanted."
Now, this is a more general thing, but now that we're like through the combat styles, fighters in general, I thought it was strange that these abilities seem to be all low-level abilities. When I look at a fighter, I would love to see high-level abilities.
I think there's a couple of very important things. One, for the practicality of the playtest. People want to play at low levels.
But why can't you include both? I mean, why would you exclude high level? There definitely won't be playtested if they're not in the UA. I agree they'd be playtested less, but if you don't include them at all, then they won't be playtested at all. And it just seems strange to me that you take something like the fighter that is already pretty good at low levels. I think you would agree, and then the high levels where they tend to struggle, they don't get anything. They don't get any new options.
What if blind fighting releases as a fighting style with a prerequisite of level 11?
I would have to totally relook at it. I think I would not have any issues with that.
But finding out if blind fighting is fun for people in general, regardless of balance, if just the concept of the ability works, you need people to actually use the ability and report back to the developers. So by putting it at level 3 or level 1, you will get a lot more feedback than if you made it a level 11 feature.
But now,
and a lot of these features might end up at a higher level.
This gets back to my concerns. This gets back to my concerns with some of these playtesting feedbacks they get, because some of the feedback they get will be like, well, my barbarian is sure a lot less fun now that the rest of the party is using darkness and they're all getting advantage and I get nothing. And then, the information I get from that isn't, well, maybe we should make it level 11. Right? Like, it's just not, it's, front loading all this stuff just so it's played doesn't necessarily give us good information if it's not going to work at low levels. And it might work at high levels. I'd love to see some of this stuff that might work better at high levels, just introduced at high levels, and yes, you'll get less feedback, but that feedback would be more relevant.
Yeah. I think you're definitely creating noise, but maybe having like, not you are creating noise, as the designer creating the survey and the playtest material, you will create noise by putting overpowered features early on, and some of your feedback will just be, that's overpowered. But the thing is, you increase your volume of feedback so much.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you ask people in your Discord what current level their characters are, I'd imagine most of them aren't level 11.
I would agree. Yeah, in my personal experience, at least 90% of the play I do is single digit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like,
And
yeah, the quality might be not as good because some people are just going to say this is OP, but it's better than people not playing it because they're not at the level, or people not playing it because they're too low level.
yeah,
Or
I'm not sure I agree, because I think some of the feedback then ends up being
yeah, sometimes
not
that happens.
not just unhelpful, but even it's just wrong, right? If you were thinking of it as a higher level ability, because the play is different at those levels, and I think the
Um,
experience would be different for a lot of this stuff at different levels. Adding 5 points of damage to an attack at level 2 and adding 5 points of damage to an attack at level 11, I think people would be giving very different feedback, maybe even opposite feedback. I think at a level 11,
yeah.
they might go, this gave my fighter exactly what they needed. When at first level, they might be saying, this was making me feel bad because I was overshadowing the other characters. I don't think that feedback then is helpful to them when it could have been
hmm
helpful.
But they're also going to get feedback like the fighter in my party had this, and so they peer pressured the wizard into casting fog cloud all the time. Then I couldn't use my cleric spells because I couldn't see anyone.
Yeah.
Right? And like they're gonna get valuable feedback from it. I think blind fighting is worth testing out, just based on the fact that it moths out so weirdly and so very different depending on the situation, depending on the target AC, depending on how many ways your party has of generating advantage, depending uh, on what kinds of enemies you encounter, because this thing is useless against enemies with blindside.
What I will say is,
Like,
sometimes I have a different view on what should be play tested and what I think I would recommend you play testing. Especially if you are wanting to have, because I think there is value in something being play tested and then telling the designers, this wrecked my game. But largely what I want to do here is tell people, don't let it wreck your game. Just don't do it in the first place. So sometimes I see, okay, blind fighting, yeah, sure, play test it. To my viewers, if you are looking for this to enhance your game, then my recommendation would be not to use it. And yeah, there'll be a little less playtest feedback to the designers, but it's your game. The design, you don't owe the designers anything.
definitely, yeah. I think in general with the UI, I'd go with we'll try it out. If it's broken, we're gonna turn it off again.
Yeah, and
That's how I'd handle it.
I just want to mention that because this is coming up a few times, and it occurs to me. I agree quite often that something should be play tested, but I want to create a difference between, yes, I agree it should be play tested, and I think, hey, you should put it in your game. I think those are two very different things.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Blind fighting was one of the big red marks on
Yeah.
my notes.
And so I'm going to go to the part where I edited the most out of my video because I went far further angry than even I did in the video. Is the monk. The monk made me angry. So let's get into the monk.
Okay.
And I'm going to get angry again. But anyway, not at you. So let's get into the monk. Monk weapons.
Yeah.
At first level, so I will mention, a couple people pointed out to me that I mentioned that your weapons for monks are monk weapons already, and it was pointed out, well, technically not a sling, not a dart, and although that is technically true, I would say that a sling and a dart from levels 1 through 4 is effectively no different than a monk weapon, and at levels 5 and higher. Once that loading property kills you on a sling, you don't want to be using it anyway. So I don't. I wanted to mention that because it had been commented to me. I did read it. You're right. Those two technically would be monk weapons, but I don't think it makes a difference on my view of this ability. What was your view of this ability?
Okay. I think one thing about all of this is you expect it to like rectify problems of the monk, right? Like you went into this
Well,
Unearthed Arcana,
I hoped.
and you were like,
I hoped.
monk should be getting buffs. Barbarian should be getting buffs at the higher levels.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the intent of the document. I think it's more of a, how do we make monk more fulfilling to play? And I agree that mechanical parity is part of that.
Okay.
But I think
So
what we
now I'm
here,
really curious because you just said something. So explain to me how these are making the monk significantly more fulfilling to players.
okay. Um, One thing is, for example, so significantly more fulfilling. It's just
Well,
it's tackling
if it's
minor pain points,
insignificant, I don't care.
right? It's tackling minor pain points. It's just a bunch of neat stuff. It's, if I'm a dwarf monk, I can now use a battle hammer, a warhammer, for my attacks and use it as a monk weapon. That's neat. If I'm a 4 elements monk, I mean, at that point, I've given up any sense of parity already. So,
Yeah.
but adding that bonus action attack that is kind of assumed that the monk can get is just, it's nice. It feels good. It isn't. It lowers the opportunity cost to your mostly terrible features, so it makes them feel less terrible.
A little bit less, yes.
Yeah.
Well, the main issue with the key fueled strike is I don't have a problem with boosting 4 elements monks, and being able to do a martial arts attack. I mean, that's essentially similar to what I did with my monk variant. Is I think you should be able to combine attacks and spells with monks, gives them something unique. But a 4 elements monk, as written, can cast so few spells. I mean, this just isn't going to come up very often.
And you get them later than anyone else.
And
Really
using so much key that you cast a spell and you're done, right? And yeah, you got the one punch, but is it really changing your playstyle that much? Is it really enhancing your the game for you in a significant way? I'm not sure it does.
I think it just feels good, and that's all it's there for. It's these very minor points. It's just like, I'm an elf, I'm a dwarf, I want to use the weapon of my race, and I can't do that with the rules, but now I can.
Yeah.
I'm a 4 elements monk or a sun soul and a burning hands, and hey, it would be cool if I could kick too. Now I can. I don't know where they take, for Distant Eye, this whole inspiration of monks as ranged characters. There's like multiple features that kind of cater to that, and I don't know where it comes from. I do not identify with that kind of flavor.
And somebody mentioned to me, I should mention in the comment section, that if you play a Kensai monk, you might use a longbow. And if you do, then maybe this would be valuable to you. Okay. I'll just acknowledge, okay, if I'm playing a Kensai monk, maybe once in a while, and if I don't have sharpshooter yet, maybe I'm a low level, okay. I could see maybe in that situation. But yeah, in general, I think monks are bad at range, and you don't want to use your key to maybe hit with a ranged weapon. Usually, I'll find that if I'm playing a character that doesn't do range, and then we're at range and I can't do melee, then I'll use a ranged weapon. But I don't really care that much if I hit or miss. It's just I just want to do something, and I don't think I'll be using key.
I don't think so too.
Yeah.
Then there's the Quickened healing, which
This one makes me mad. It makes me mad. Okay, go ahead.
But I don't know. Are the developers under the impression that I start a short rest with key points remaining?
Well, no, you never do. You never do.
Yeah,
You're lucky if you made it past the first combat with key points remaining. Key points go so fast, and it's
I'm happy if I made it past the first turn of combat.
And not just key points remaining. You need multiple key points remaining to get a D4. I mean, it's just nothing. It just, yeah, like I said, you read it, and it doesn't. For me, this doesn't relieve a pain point. This creates a pain point because I've got this thing that is so bad. It's just like with people's complaints about the ranger. With the ranger, their issue is, things. Just for example, favorite enemy sucks. Okay, I agree with you. Now, I think there are other things about the Ranger that can still make it worthwhile to play, but I understand why that is a sore point. This puts a sore point in the Monk.
There's also one very weird thing. That is, if we don't assume we behave like responsible adults with our short rests, we can actually get a large amount of bonus healing from this.
Okay, but we do.
But we do.
And
Yeah.
I assume other players do, and those who don't, they can break the game anyway. So go ahead.
Yeah.
And if that's fun for you, go for it. As long as it's fun for everybody else at your table. But I think for me and for the fun I don't have playing a monk, this just is like another black eye.
I mean,
yeah, it's just an insult. It makes
and it's just like if you got beat up real bad, you can heal yourself for a bit.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Well, yeah, it's like you get beat up really bad, and you're sitting there lying on the floor, and you're crawling, and they take that healing potion and they put it just out of your reach, and they say, "Aren't you having more fun?" Yeah, like no,
and then Jeremy Crawford arrives with a new Unearthed Arcana, and he takes the healing potion, and he just nudges it towards you, and you take the healing potion, you open it, and it's full of salt. Because that's what this feature is.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But yeah. I really like the first level feature. I think that is really neat.
The monk weapons?
Yes. And I really like the keyboard strikes. Just
I will say, if you're playing, like your example, playing the dwarven monk that you can use a warhammer, great. I got no issues. Yeah, I just got to point that out in case.
Yeah.
But I do. It does kind of push that kind of character over a regular monk because the regular monk doesn't get anything here, and I wish they did. I wish you could give the dwarf that, and you could give the elf that, and the monk that's not a dwarf or an elf could get something.
Mm-hmm. The important thing to keep in mind, and this is why I kind of talked about the parity. Isn't that important when we were talking about the Find Familiar Wild Shape and the Channel Divinity spell slot?
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
better to give something to some monks. Yeah. Yes, they do. Yeah. I want to. I really do.
So a lot of people enjoy Monk, and I think this makes people enjoy Monk more, and more people enjoy Monk. It doesn't fix fundamental mechanical problems, but at the end of the day, this is a boon to the game in the sense that it's more fun.
Now, in general, like I said, if a player came to me and wanted any of these, I'd give it. I don't see a problem with that. But it just, I feel like the monk got screwed. I feel like the monk got screwed here, really hard, because I don't have fun playing a monk, and I'm not alone. I know some people disagree, but I'm not alone, and this doesn't address any of my pain points. It just doesn't. And I was hopeful. I was hopeful it would. And when I read this, it was kind of a shock, right? Like, a gut blow. That, nope, you're not going to get to fix the one that you want, or create, or take things that you don't like about it and get another option that is more fun. It's just not there for me. And, so I was super disappointed with the monk. So that was my opinion on that. But we can move on. So let's talk about the Paladin. We talked about fighting style options already. But there's a new one here, Blessed Warrior. I think, if you want to play a Paladin that, focuses more on spells, and that's just kind of the way you want to move it, this certainly isn't going to be a problem. I don't think it's necessarily as powerful as other combat styles, especially at higher levels. But you can trade it out. So I don't think that's a problem either. What's your opinion on Blessed Warrior?
I don't see where you'd ever take it, but I'm glad it's there.
Okay. So Paladin spells. I mean, I don't see what we need to add to that. Paladin spells. Yeah, I think we had the same reaction here, right?
There is one. I think it's absolutely not okay that Paladin at 5th level can just cast Gentle Repose on someone and just keep them Gentle Reposed till they can revivify them at level 9. That's not okay.
Okay, so you have an issue not with just with Spirit Guardians. You
No,
have
no,
an
no,
issue
no,
with Spirit.
this-
Okay, I don't know. I don't know.
No, that was a joke.
Yeah, okay.
No. But yeah, if someone really likes the character, you can now keep them alive for 4 levels and then revivify them and then have your DM explain why the character is back at the level of the body. So, no, the big standout spell here is Spirit Guardians.
Yeah.
Spirit Guardians is a feature for 2 subclasses, for the Oath of the Crown and another one. I don't recall.
No.
which.
I should correct. I made a mistake. No, I made a mistake in the video. I said it was for 2, but it's only Oath of the Crown. I had said it was Conquest as well.
Devotion?
No, well, let me double check that, but I don't think so.
I might be wrong.
Let me check Devotion right now, just so we know what we're talking about. I don't think so.
No, Devotion
No.
gets Speaking of Hope and Dispel Magic.
Yeah, no, definitely not Spirit Guardians. So it's only Oath of the Crown. And Oath of the Crown is, in my opinion, the subclass that needed it most.
Yes.
Because they don't get a lot of goodies, but that one they get. And then you're just giving it to everybody.
Well, I do want to say that the Oath of the Crown does have Champion Challenge, which I believe is the only CC in the game that lasts indefinitely.
Okay. Okay. You're in agreement with me here, I think.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
Oath of the Crown really needs the Spirit Guardians. So the important thing about Spirit Guardians is that Spirit Guardians fixes everything that is the weakness of Paladin, with the exception of not being able to reach dragons that are flying.
Yeah.
Spirit Guardians gives them a spell slot efficient area of effect option with a control effect strapped on top of it.
Well, yeah, Spirit Guardians, in terms of 3rd level spells, it's one of the best in the game. But in addition to that, it's particularly nice if you're adding it on a martial character. Yeah.
Yes.
And I have seen builds built around getting Spirit Guardians on a martial character, and they're good. They're very good. And yeah, Paladins, you know what? Paladins are good. If you want to play a martial character, let me recommend a Paladin. They are very, very effective. They do not need this at all.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is one of the 2 or 3 stipulations I have for my game. Use this Unearthed Arcana, but Paladins don't get Spirit Guardians.
Okay.
That's just too much.
Yeah, and I don't have an issue with any of the other ones here. Channel Divinity, Harness Divine Power. We've talked about this already with the Cleric, so I don't know if we need to talk about it again. I mean, I said my piece. Did you have something different to offer here?
I think, doing it with, you can use an action to cast a spell, or when you hit with an attack, you can expend Channel Divinity to 1st level Divine Smite.
Yeah, do something. Do one
acceptable
thing. I agree.
Yeah. I take it in my games without a change, but I can see your points about it, and I think it's a little bit strong on the Paladin, because Paladin is more prone to being able to use the Shield of Faith spell than the Cleric is.
And I will say too, Paladins are good. I mean, I don't know if they need a boost at level 3.
I feel like it feels really bad for the Ancients Paladin when you made your Eternal Cockroach.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So
I don't like that Channel Divinity at all.
I agree. That Channel Divinity is what actually needs to be improved, and that one is Nature's Wrath. It's called, and what we're referring to, in case you don't know, is you can use your action, and then you can creatures within that 10-foot radius make a saving throw, and they are restrained if they fail. But it they get a saving throw every round on it. It's not very good, and as far as the Channel Divinity options for Paladins, it's not a good one. I still like Oath of the Ancients because I like Aura of Warding, but Nature's Wrath, I agree, is weak.
You made one slight wording mistake. I don't know if you think it's so bad that you don't even remember the feature anymore, but it's not a 10-foot radius for all the creatures.
It's one creature.
It's a single creature.
Yeah, so that's how it should be fixed.
In front of me.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, so as an action, you can cast Spectral Vines to spring up and reach for a creature within 10 feet of you that you can see. Creature must make a Strength or Dexterity saving throw, its choice, or be restrained.
Well, that's
restrained, the creature repeats the saving throw at the end of each of its turns.
Well, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, getting the pick is especially huge, because if this was only Dexterity saving throws, then this would be actually good against dragons.
Yeah. No, okay, yeah. I mean, we've got no argument on that ability.
And just sitting on the ability that doesn't do anything.
With my Eternal Cockroach build, I will say, specifically, that is the theme of kind of abilities I wanted, but I acknowledge that in terms of effectiveness, it didn't even match up to the other things they could do. But I still like the theme of it. But yeah, that ability itself needs a boost, is what really needs to happen. I mean, Oath of the Ancients, giving them more uses of Bless, I don't think fits thematically with Oath of the Ancients as much as if you just made that ability. Maybe if you did make it 10 feet and everyone in that radius or something. I don't know. Let's not talk about fixing Oath of the Ancients, but I absolutely acknowledge that's a terrible ability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is where the Oath of the Ancients Paladin doesn't feel great about having the ability, and that's why I think those Harness Divine Power Channel Divinities are really upping the game and improving the enjoyment of the character. And even if the spellcasting is a bit more versatile, I think it's not going to bother other players, but it's heavily going to increase the enjoyment of the player playing the class.
Okay. I mean, we've had this conversation before, so let's move on. And let's talk about, the one that got by far the most was the Ranger.
Yes. Maybe let's actually take like a 2 or 3 minute break.
Yeah, sure.
Because I need one. I need to drink something, and we've been talking for like 2 hours at this point. I can go for like another hour.
Okay.
Before I have to jump on my game.
So I just want to say to everyone, so we're going to split this video into 2 parts. So this is the end of the first part. And if you would like to join us for the second part, I will be posting another video later this week. So I hope you'll join me then.